Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to have a look at some really beautiful decks for Samhain. So let's start with the obvious one because I believe that there's a lot of us who have this deck. It's an oracle deck. It's called The Seasons of the Witch Samhain Oracle, and it's by Lorianne Anderson, Juliet Diaz. The first illustrator that Rockpool used for these decks was Jada Rose. Then after a couple of editions of these decks, they moved to a different illustrator. I believe that now all of the decks are actually being created, printed, not released yet. There is one which is Ostara, which is the last one of all of the Seasons of the Witch, and it will be available early next year. I know that some copies have been sent for reviews, but I haven't seen any so far. So this is obviously this is the Samhain Oracle, and we all know this deck because it's been released for Halloween or Samhain a couple of years ago already. Gee, times fly, it's incredible. And it is one of those decks that has started a whole cult. I would have to say, not cult in a bad way, but cult as in a whole lot of followers. In my opinion, this is also the most beautiful deck of all of the Seasons of the Witch Oracles because there's a few elements that obviously they appeared for the first time in this deck, and it was a surprise for everyone. I don't know if you know, but this deck was originally an indie deck, and it came in a tarot size or tarot format rather than an oracle one. It was slightly different, I think, but I've seen a couple of walkthroughs, and I have to say they probably, I think the Rockpool did a really good job in adapting it for mass market format. And the good thing is that when they went on with the other Seasons of the Witch, they decided to stick to this format. And it was an excellent decision because, as it happens, when you collect all of them and you have them all, you can actually really do a lot of work throughout the year. Because it obviously covers 12 months, it covers all of the Seasons of the Witch. So obviously we're talking about the Sabbath. So it's something that I've come to really appreciate the opportunity of starting something and having this project that I know is going to cover the whole year. And I know that I'm going to be acquainted with these cards and with this art style, even though when they moved to the new illustrator, the art style slightly changed, but not so much as to not being able to work with all of these decks together. As a matter of fact, I believe a couple of weeks ago, I released a video where I was giving out a free spread for the Seasons of the Witch oracles, one for each Sabbath, but obviously we're missing Ostara, so hopefully next year when I'll get Ostara, I will update that spread. When it comes to Samhain though, I have to say this is a deck that is probably not well balanced. So in my opinion, Samhain is obviously the season in which we feel that the veil is thinning, and some of us are very, how should I say this? We're very sensitive to the communication, the messages that are coming from beyond the veil. And it's always a personal choice whether you want to approach these messages and listen to them and do something with them or not. But I have to say, this year for me, the veil is practically non-existent. I have spent, ever since the, let's say, mid or the end of September, I've had multiple dreams with loved ones that are not with us anymore, and it's been very, very intense. And I have to say, there is something to be said. So we need to protect ourselves, obviously. The energies that we are receiving in this specific season are very potent, very powerful energies, but they're also poignant. They're also sometimes they take a lot of energies out of you, and as a consequence of that, you have to make sure that when you're listening to these messages coming from beyond the veil, you have to recuperate your energy itself. You have to make sure that you're back on track. You have to make sure that your heart is not going through too much fatigue. And I do that with a lot of different activities. For example, I go for frequent walks because also exercise, you know, it's just not physically the right thing to do, not just physically, but also mentally. And it does protect your mind. I don't mean protect as in we need to protect ourselves because there's something negative or something malevolent, but there certainly is a lot of exhaustion around being constantly in contact with you know, all of these messages from the Beyond the Veil. It's a really beautiful deck, but I wanted to show you other decks that I believe are very conducive of this type of work for this time of the year. And ironically, I have more oracle decks than I have tarot decks, because I believe that tarot decks, except for one or two, tarot decks are exceptionally good as a starting point, but oracle decks are the ones that in this specific time of the year open up a portal for you to be able to create this connection with the Beyond the Veil. So one tarot deck that I actually do use in this time of the year, or specifically for someone, is the Miro Im's Tarot by Von Sos, New York. Miro Im is a South Korean tattoo artist. She does travel a lot. She's also she has a website where she's also posting a lot of her artwork for sale, as in posters, for example. And this is an incredibly beautiful deck. And the reason why, as I was saying earlier, I use tarot mostly as a starting point for this type of work for someone. But there are a couple of exceptions of decks that I actually use almost by themselves, so not necessarily combined with an oracle deck, because I believe that they have that kind of cathartic energy that we need in order to be able to put ourselves into the best possible position to listen to these messages. There are a couple of cards on this deck that really speak to me of that kind of those kind of vibes. And in specific, I was seeing here the Three of Cups, for example. There is this presence of skeletons and skeleton hands and skulls in this deck. It is some sort of like minimalist deck in the sense that I'm just going to put this card here because I want to talk about it, but this deck is minimalist in the sense that when we look at the minors, for example, you know, as you can see here, they are fully illustrated, but they're not necessarily scenic in the sense of RWS scenic. This is an incredibly powerful deck, and I have to say in many cases it can also be a triggering deck, as you can see, for example, on this card. So I highly recommend you to protect yourself. If this is triggering for you, perhaps you want to skip ahead to the next deck. However, if we open our heart and we open our minds to understanding the message coming and the vibes coming out of this deck, you will see that there's almost no veil. There's almost no confines, no borders between this world and the next world. And that's one of the reasons why I mostly use this deck around this time of the year and for the purpose of this kind of communication, or at least putting myself and giving myself the best chance to understand the messages. And this is the Lover's card, and I'm also gonna put it aside because that's mainly what I want to talk about. Other than that, this deck is really beautiful. I mean, artistically speaking, I do recognize that there's a lot of soul in these cards, and I really like that. There's a number of symbols that we can talk about, obviously the presence of skulls, but in this case, for example, the Six of Hearts, as you can see, there's always this presence of both a human hand, as you can see here, but also at the same time a skeleton hand, and that obviously creates that kind of sense of the path that it's in front of us when we work with Samhain and the Samhain energies. So when we open ourselves up to the possibility of listening to the message of those beyond the veil, it does create this kind of communication, it creates this kind of connection. And willing it or not, we have to understand that we are talking with someone who's in a different realm. And so the messages can be different. Perhaps they don't necessarily use the words or words in the same way that we do, and they might not be communicating an actual message. When we talk about a feeling, when we're talking about an emotion, when we talk about a concept, when we talk about an image, for example, the Empress is really powerful. It's really beautiful because it's reaching out from this curtain of what could be air, for example. It's really, really nice. So what we need to understand related to Samhain is that, as I said before, always protect yourself and make sure that you're not dragged down by the exhaustion of being in communication and creating this connection. But at the same time, we need to accept that the messages could be images, it could be feelings, it could be even a dream, for example. And I, for one, have had so many dreams in which, you know, people that are not there with me anymore, they're literally just talking to me and telling me things. And sometimes I don't want to react immediately to those messages. I want to take my time, and that is definitely helping me to keep some energies for myself. So when we look at these two cards together, something that I really wanted to point out is something that I've never seen in any other deck. So the Lovers card is about that bond, and the bond can be seen between the skeleton hand and this hand, which is covered by human flesh, which we can assume it's the hand of a living person, and this we can assume is the hand of a person who's not living anymore. But there is this bond with this string that is attaching the two little fingers of these hands. And what I love about it is that the message behind this card seems to be telling us that there is that bond, that love actually goes beyond the physical restraints of being alive. And when we decide to have this bond, we are making a conscious choice. We're making a choice of believing that we will always have this bond. We will always be together. We will always have this connection with someone that we love, even when they pass away. This is incredibly difficult for me to talk about because it is incredibly painful. No matter how much work you do on these kind of feelings, it's always very, very painful. I have, however, found a lot of help thanks to the use of tarot. And let me tell you, I have done a lot of therapy when it comes to processing grief and loss. But I found that honestly, therapy can only help you to a certain extent because there's a lot of work to be done on a spiritual level. And depending on your therapist, of course, you know me guys, I've done a lot of studies on neurobiology and obviously in neuroscience. So of course I am an advocate for therapy, but I also believe strongly in the spiritual care of your own soul and your own well-being. And so as a consequence of that, as a matter of fact, believe that therapy alone is not enough when we're processing grief and loss. And so together with my Starlight member, we're actually starting this week. Nothing to replace therapy, absolutely not, but we're starting a tarot roadmap to processing grief and loss, giving therapy the additional spiritual component that sometimes therapy actually lacks. So this is a really intense work that we're doing with our Starlight members. You can check out my membership tiers. There's a bit for everyone. There's lots and lots of videos that I do, lots of activities. We're also studying decks together. We're also doing a tarot course. So I'm actually giving out one live video a month in which we're interacting with my members, and we're learning how to read tarot together on a professional level. So that's a lot of fun. If you want to join, that's accessible to the Sunlight and the Starlight members. So as I was saying, when we realize and admit to ourselves that we need also some spiritual support in order to go through the motions of grief and loss, this is an actual choice. This is a choice of being aware that your bond with the other person is a bond that transcends time and also transcends death. And I think about the movie Interstellar. Interstellar is a sci-fi movie from a few years ago. I believe it was released in 2014, so it's already been 10 years. And it's a movie with Matthew McConaughey and I believe also Jessica Chastain and other actors. And I believe that in that movie there is so much that goes beyond the scenes and the admittedly really beautiful scenery and cinematography, because the concept of love that transcends any physical realm of, you know, time and space, and therefore even death, is an incredibly important message. And something that I wanted to bring your attention to is the Three of Cups. So obviously the Three of Cups, when you think about the numerological meaning of the card 3, or the number 3, we think about growth. So it comes out of number 2, because in number 2 we realize that we're not alone anymore. It's not the unit, it's the couple. And then the couple grows into understanding that they have to open up their boundaries and let someone else in. This is an incredibly beautiful card because it seems to point out to the fact that there is a union between these two people that still, because the hands are not skeleton hands, they are apparently human beings, alive human beings' hands, but they're supported by the hand of a skeleton. So in this case, it looks almost as if this person that was here in the Lover's card, with a skeleton hand, is supporting the union of these two people. So that is something very, very powerful, and I believe that this kind of work is probably best done this time of the year because the veil is thinning, and even for those of us who do not necessarily work with these kind of energies, I strongly believe that we need to celebrate these kind of opportunities and recognize when it's the right time to talk about them. Okay, so the next deck I want to show you, I'm actually showing that it's an oracle deck, and I wanted to show you that with the Miro Im tarot, because I originally showed this deck. This is the Lost Oracle by Fiona Horn, and by the way, this is a rockpool deck. It's a very recent release, but it's a fantastic deck. It's a very witchy deck, but at the same time it brings about an ancient kind of wisdom that is definitely coming from beyond the veil. It's a wisdom that comes from our elders and from those that are no longer with us but are still caring about us from beyond the veil. This is a deck that I work with the Fyodor Pavlov, because the art style is very similar, but I was trying out this combo as well this morning, and I was blown away by how powerful these two decks are together. I know that the Miro Im is not necessarily a deck that everyone has. It's not a popular deck. It is a beautiful deck, but I know that it's rather expensive, and for that reason I believe that it's probably not an easy deck to acquire. I was so lucky because I actually was able to procure this deck in one of the Facebook groups I'm a member of, and it came with let's say a price tag that I could afford. And I was really, really happy because I had this deck on my wish list for a while, and it had been quite difficult to resist the temptation of spending all that money in buying it new. But then again, at the same time, I would have had to pay, because it comes from the States, I would have had to pay import taxes, I would have had to pay an astronomical amount of money in shipping costs. And so, it's always better when I find it secondhand in one of the Facebook groups or eBay or Etsy or whatever. And I also have to say that it came in pristine condition, so obviously I was really happy because it really felt like it was coming to me almost as if it were new. Now, there is something to say about these two decks together. The art style is very similar, and it is similar because it's minimalist in both decks. The colors, even though they're not exactly the same, they do pair up really well together. And I have to say, it's definitely not for the faint of heart, in the sense that I would not recommend using these decks for a happy reading, for a hug, as if you were looking at hug decks. I think that was clear, obviously, when I was showing the Miro Im tarot, because it is very It has a powerful energy, but also confronting kind of energy. Using it with the Lost Oracle brings about some kind of balance and grounding, especially because you can choose to focus on the titles, but also the message that you gather from these cards. So for example, in this case, we're looking at ancestral alchemy, conjure your legacy. I also have to say that in this deck, the Lost Oracle, there's a lot of cards, almost, I would say 80% of the cards in this deck come with a message that really is very apt for the kind of energies we find around Samhain. So obviously conjure your legacy. When we talk about legacy, we're talking about our ancestors, and conjuring our legacy means getting in touch with our ancestors and what they meant and the value that they had in their community, and they can still have through us, you know, when we get in communication with them and we accept the message, but also we accept the legacy of being who we are meant to be. So really beautiful, blessed resilience. You can weather the storm between the High Priestess and the Empress. It's such an amazing combination of these two together, I have to say. I have had many goosebump moments when working with this deck this morning, and so I really, that's what really gave me the opportunity to talk about these two in this video, because I believe these two together are absolutely perfect for Samhain. So let's have a look at other decks that I've got. Another two decks that I want to show you together, because I really believe that they fit those kind of vibes that I'm looking for the Samhain festivity. The Wisdom of the Elders Oracle by Sean Leonard. The artwork is by Tracy Metallic and Aaron Gugu. And the Gentle Tarot by Mary in the Sky. I have to say these two together are absolutely fantastic. There is an activation. You can literally feel the energies being activated when looking at these two, when working at this with these two together. And I believe last year I think I released a custom spread for free about how to use the Elders, the Wisdom of the Elders Oracle. And it was right about this time, because it is one of those decks that I always use for this purpose. And they're just really, really amazing. Not just because they share a very similar color palette, they share also very similar art style, even though, as you've heard before, they are not being created by the same artist. So obviously we're not looking at two decks by Mary in the Sky. But I really strongly believe that we're looking at the possibility of expanding our practice with these two when working with these two together, because of how conducive a reading feels when you're flipping the cards and you're looking at the images like that. Now, one very important thing is to mention is that this oracle, so the Wisdom of the Elders Oracle, has got a fantastic guidebook. And I highly recommend reading it and working with it. Now, you know me, I always advocate reading and working with the guidebook, no matter what the deck is. Even if it's a normal RWS clone, it's always interesting to hear what the perspective of the creator is, in order for you to understand that there might be additional layers of understanding, you know, together with the cards you're looking at. So I highly recommend it. This one really talks about the cards, but it's also giving you the opportunity to go on a much deeper level when using these two together. So they are divided in different categories. So obviously you find the name. Oh, I found this one. So the forest with the keyword support. And just to give you an example, so it talks about how the forest works as support in this first part, and then towards the end of the description here, it tells you if you have drawn the forest card today, it may be a call to help bring unity among a group of people in your life. Your strength, whether it be spiritual, physical, emotional, mental, may be required this time to help others in need. By embracing diversity and your own unique perspective, you can be of service and assist others. Remember to take time and stand among the trees. Feel the earth beneath your feet. Bathe in the grounding energy, take in the smells of nature, and meditate on how you can provide support in the same way that the trees support one another. This one, let me tell you, I actually pulled this card a couple of weeks ago, and it was after I had this dream about a relative of mine who's no longer with me. And this really felt, when I pulled this card thinking about this person, it really felt like it was something this person would have said to me as an advice. So this person would have literally told me, look, yes, there is some conflict here, but you have the power to actually ground everyone, to, you know, bring back the peace. They need your help right now. And that felt like I was literally communicating with this person. So I highly recommend this too. It doesn't take a lot of meditation. It doesn't take a lot of concentration. As you can see, you can just literally empty your mind and choose to just look at the cards, focus on the cards, and then read the messages when the image on the card, for example, feels like it's speaking to you. Or you can pull a card, or you can use it together with the tarot deck like I'm doing right now. And then read the guidebook, because the messages, as I said, are really, really intense, are very deep and very helpful as well. And it's also really nice to read them as messages of an elder that is getting in touch with you. It feels personally like you're not alone, like you're still in touch with them. There is still this bond that exists, even though it is a bond that transcends, you know, death. So it is really a very beautiful, very intense experience, I may say. So these two, especially together, that will make your experience of Samhain even more profound. And then the next deck, I want to remind you what I was saying at the beginning of this video, when I was saying that mostly I use oracle decks for this time of the year, especially related to Samhain, because I believe that tarot is just a starting point or a stepping stone, let's say, but the real work that I do is with oracle decks. But I also said that there were a couple of exceptions. This is one of them. So this is the Penumbra Tarot, Evoke the Liminal Space. This has been created by Aries Elizabeth, and the guidebook is by our lovely Anthony with Aries Elizabeth as well. This is an amazing deck. So the Penumbra itself, even the name, the title of the deck, evokes those kind of vibes that are really felt during this time of the year for Samhain. This is a really beautiful deck. There is a quote by William Brake: in the universe there are things that are known and things that are unknown, and in between them there are doors. How amazing is that? You obviously start your relationship with this deck and you read this quote and you think about it, and that is the perfect deck. This is literally the perfect deck to use this time of the year, because Samhain is one of the main things about Samhain, at least for me as a tradition when I celebrate this festivity, is to literally just understand that there is just a veil between this world and another world and the next world. And so we can definitely feel this kind of bond, and it just feels a lot stronger this time of the year. So the Penumbra Tarot has an amazing guidebook. By the way, it is all in color, as you can see. The images are borderless, and I really love that. And when we're looking at any cards, so for example, I've got the Throne of Swords here. So we're looking at a part which talks about legacy, and we're also looking at the meaning of the card reversed. But what I like about this is that it also gives you, as I was mentioning earlier, a bit of an additional layer of interpretation of the cards themselves, in the sense that yes, it is an RWS based deck, but because it does focus on these Penumbra vibes, it does look at the cards in a slightly different way. So obviously we also have a little bit more when it comes to the major arcanas as well. but we always talk about legacy. Legacy is a very important term to understand. So legacy is something that we receive. It's something that we talk about when we think about who we are. Our intergenerational legacy and inheritance is something that has not started with us, but has started many centuries ago. We are all part of something in common with everyone else in the world. We do belong to the same kind of tribe. It's just that obviously with the differences in our lives, we may decide whether we want to feel these common things or not. We can decide also to refuse them. It is depending on us, but I do believe that at this time of the year, we may feel these connections even more. And ultimately, it is also a connection to nature. So there is, when we look at the majors, there's not just the legacy and the reversed meaning of the cards, there's also Aaron's notes, which are called apogee and perigee. And then there is a recommendation about a song. So when we look at the justice card, for example, the apogee and the perigee, she watches and she sees all her memory is ancient and her reach extends past written history. Her register is long and all things must be weighted. As the tides shift, the truth will out, sacred truth, holy truth, and her assessment is measured, swift and perfect. True justice cannot be corrupted. This is the apogee, and then you will look at the perigee, and it's obviously the opposite. So we're looking at this card came through as a divine being with so many names. Lightbringer, keeper of cosmic order. She guides me on my journey and appears many times throughout the deck in several manifestations. Justice is not just about legal affairs. It is about articulating your own core truth and what the manifestation of that might be. Her starry crown is a symbol of her power, and her staff is a nod to the goddess Maat, the Egyptian personification of justice, who weighted hearts in the afterlife against a feather. So obviously we can see both of these aspects in the cards themselves, and I believe that when we decide to use this guidebook this way, by reading the perigee, the apogee, and relating to the meanings of these cards, we also put ourselves in a very conducive space to better listen to the message that is coming from beyond the veil. Penumbra is literally that liminal space in between this world and the next. And when it comes to the art style, I love it. It's a very colorful deck. All of the colors are very saturated, which is obviously a very bold choice, but I personally really appreciate that. I love the fact that this cardstock is amazing. It's got a really nice feel to the touch. It's papery, and it's one of those decks that I always, can you hear that? So I always like to do this when I talk about these kind of decks, because it's not just about the tactile experience, it's also about the auditory experience, because our nervous system tend to respond to this. So it does everything it needs to do in order to put you in the right position to be receptive for these kind of vibes. And I personally really enjoy doing this. I really enjoy using this deck this time of the year, other times of the year as well, of course, but this time of the year even more so for the reasons that we've seen earlier. So this is a really beautiful deck, and it's a mass market deck, so you can actually find it. I believe it's still available on Amazon. So you can reach out and get it if you so wish, the Penumbra Tarot. Another oracle deck that I wanted to show you today that I tend to use in and around Samhain is this one here that comes with this really beautiful pouch with the mushrooms. And so this deck is an indie deck. It's an indie oracle deck, and it's called the Old Ways Magic Oracle, and it's illustrated by Naomi Cornock. Now, there is a different edition, or let's say a second edition of this deck. I don't have that. I know that the other edition, the following edition, has an additional few cards. So it would be interesting to compare these two, and I'm sure that we can find on YouTube some comparing videos. I am quite happy with this edition, I have to say, so I have never really reached out to get the second edition of the deck. It is fantastic. I really love Naomi's art style. I think that it's incredibly powerful, very, very confronting, but good confronting, not triggering confronting. So it is one of those decks that puts you in a very witchy kind of mood as well. And I don't mean witchy as in the witchy that we're used to see during Halloween, but that witchy as in the person that is, you know, basking in these kind of energies of in and around Samhain. The guidebook is really good as well, even though it is smaller. And let's say it does have a small thumbprint in full color of the cards. Obviously, we're looking at the title and the keyword associated with that. We're looking at a little bit of a description about why the eagle owl, the owl, is referring to wisdom. And then we have something that is called welcome, warning, and wisdom. And for the eagle owl, for example, it says, well, the welcome part says dealing with all things honestly and see past deceit in others. The warning part says deceiving yourself or others. So it almost feels like it's reading a reversed meaning. And the wisdom is a general message about this card. So why is it called wisdom? Why the keyword? To owl, I ask, guide me past illusion and deceit to the truth. Really, really beautiful, you know, when it comes to the guidebook as well. Highly recommend it. And I absolutely love the Triskellis, you know, in the back as well. I believe it's also the backs of the deck itself. Yes, see, we got it here. So obviously we have these Celtic vibes that are quite clear. Really beautiful though. Not so much into the Celtic vibes that it cannot be used if you're not into Celtic lore. So I will have to say that you can, I think that anyone can use this deck because of the keywords at the bottom. And I have good news. So I was actually recently watching, I think it was last night or this morning, I was watching Anthony's latest haul video. And in one of the decks that she recently got into her collection is called the Call of the Morrigan Oracle. And it's a mass market deck published by Llewellyn, but it's got Naomi Cormack's artwork. So it looks very much like this one. It comes with a fantastic guidebook, as all Llewellyn books do. And it's really, really interesting. I don't think that it's available yet. I think that it will be available in perhaps a couple of months' time. Certainly for Australia, we'll have to wait for it for probably Q2 next year, but it's worth it. It's really beautiful. I was looking at the cards together with Anthony, and she was saying that she was getting quite emotional by looking at the cards, and I had the same reaction. I got quite emotional by looking at some of the cards, so I'm really looking forward to that deck. Hopefully there will be also, I have no news around that, but hopefully there will be also a tarot deck that will be illustrated by Naomi, because I believe her artwork is absolutely exceptional. And this is one of the decks that I find in my personal practice really puts me at ease with the vibes and working with these vibes in this time of the year. And then we got another two decks that I wanted to show you together as a combo. So we're talking about the Rain Shadow Tarot by Claire Mack and the When Olga Speaks by Sasha Lopez. This is an oracle deck that not many of us unfortunately have, because Sasha had launched a Kickstarter campaign that was, I think it was during an unfortunate time of the year, because it was during summer, and during summer people don't tend to back Kickstarter campaign simply because we're out and about, we're doing our things, the kids are at home, you know, there's a number of things, and we don't necessarily have time to look through Kickstarter. But I still hope, so I got this deck because Sasha then released it for perhaps only a couple of months on Make Playing Cards, I want to say, I think. And so I was really lucky because I got it. But I hope that Sasha, if you're watching this, everyone is asking you, begging you to, you know, start another Kickstarter campaign, because we really love this deck so much. And I love to pair with the Rain Shadow Oracle by Claire Mack. I really believe that we may use these decks whenever we may need a little bit of help in entering these kind of Samhain vibes. So let me just see if I can explain what I want to say. So The When Olga Speaks oracle is based on Sasha's grandmother's saying. So the way in which she was relating to the world, she was talking about the world, and the way in which she was also making sure to be close to Sasha and support her in when she was growing up, and giving her the possibility to be protected from the world and, you know, something that may be negative events or stuff like that. And I believe that Sasha has imprinted so much in her grandmother's saying, because this deck is absolutely one of the most powerful oracle decks that I've got in my entire collection, and you guys know that I have hundreds of decks. So the reason why I'm saying that is because it's not just a successful deck when it comes to the let's say the artistic endeavor. So we've got a collage deck, obviously, as you can see. I believe it was a analog collage, so Sasha literally went through magazines and magazines, cutting out images and then collaging them and creating this deck. But also I believe that she was actually channeling her grandmother when she was finding the combination between the images, but also the association between the images and the keywords. So it works out really, really well. It is, as a collage deck, I also like to pair it with other collage decks that I've got, or tarot decks that are collage. And the rain shadow is probably, when it comes to aesthetics, I want to say, is probably not the best combination for the When Olga Speaks oracle. However, the vibes of these two decks together are absolutely mind-blowing, and because there is this sense of strong channeling of what Olga was saying, there is also, you know, you can use the rain shadow as a stepping stone, as I was saying earlier, to enter into that twilight zone, into that penumbra, into that liminal space that is very conducive of this kind of season and the vibes of Samhain. I really look at this card. This card is so powerful, and it's called Regret. I don't know if you can tell, because the one thing that I would say is probably make sure to make the font, no, the font is fine, but the color of the writing of the titles here a bit more visible, because I, for one, sometimes I struggle whenever it's on white background, on a black background. So in this case, I can read it, for example, not a problem at all, but in other cases, perhaps maybe an issue. But that is the only thing that I have to say about this deck that is not 100% for me, and that might be very personal. So I actually have absolutely nothing negative to say about this deck. The cardstock is phenomenal. I absolutely love it, and I love the fact that I was able to get a copy because I use it so much. So as I was saying, there is this kind of strong bond that creates between these two decks. There's a lot of sacred geometry also, because the Rain Shadow Tarot has a lot of geometric symbols and sacred geometry that we can focus on. But when you look at the combination between cards like this, the Teacher with the eye, and you know, this looks like an eye, for example, at the center of this moon-like geometrical figure. And it's just, you know, the what looks like a tent here, but it does show you a triangle, and the top of the star also shows you a triangle. So there's a number of similarities between the symbols that can be used in order for us as a reader to create this kind of connections and understanding what the message is. So I highly recommend. Obviously, I don't think you can get this deck any longer. At least it's not available on Make It Plain cards, but I could be completely wrong. So if you know if this deck is still available, please let me know in the comments below. I'm sure that there's a number of people that want to get their hands on this deck. But if Sasha is going to relaunch the Kickstarter campaign, I'll make sure to tell everyone, to tell as many people as possible, because this is an incredible deck. Trust me, it's an incredible deck. And last but not least, I wanted to talk about an oracle deck that honestly is being released over a year ago, I believe. And I've never seen it anywhere apart from my channel, or you know, sometimes there's a couple of Instagram posts about with this deck. This is an incredible deck. I think that this has gone under the radar because it is a rock pool deck, and sometimes rock pool releases 4 or 5 decks every month. And unfortunately, as a result of an inflation of decks, some of them get, you know, they get unnoticed, which is a pity. So this is the Witching Hour Oracle, and ironically it's by Lorian Anderson, which is the same author, creator of the Seasons of the Witch Oracles, but the illustration is by Olivia Burkay. And so this is obviously, because it's called the Witching Hour, we're looking into a magical deck. As a matter of fact, the subtitle says Awaken Your Inner Magic. But I strongly believe that at this time of the year, this is a perfect deck. I absolutely love the images. I also love the illustrations and the artwork. But when it comes to the strength of this deck is to be seen in the combination between the images and the titles of the cards, and also the combination with the keywords. So for example, this is the Witch of the Woods, and we see this cabin in the woods with a chimney that is releasing some kind of sparkling smoke. So we imagine that there is something magical being brewed in the cauldron inside this cabin. And so it also says retreat. So obviously we're looking into this time of the year because we're looking into retreating within ourselves and making sure that we are more sensitive to the vibes that are being released in the atmosphere, in the liminal space at this time of the year. So the witch hunter, danger, beware, the witch hunter, or invocations, the power of words, or cast the circle, raising vibrations, knowing, taking the first step, and so on and so forth. I absolutely love this, and because I'm looking at this card, this will work perfectly with the body tarot, or is it the body language? Sorry, the body language tarot, which is an incredibly difficult and hard to find deck. If you have it though, this oracle deck will go perfectly with that tarot. I don't have that tarot, unfortunately. It is on my wish list, but you know what? I don't have hundreds and hundreds of dollars to spend on a deck. Obviously, I'm just saying it now, but then when someone is rehoming a deck and asking for hundreds of dollars, I actually ask myself if I want it or not. So sometimes I even ignore myself and my discipline and my purposes, because sometimes there is such an amazing deck being put on offer that I cannot just say no. But in any case, if you do have it, the body language tarot, I think it's called, or something similar, it will pair up really, really well with this oracle deck. As I said, there's a lot about witching, or obviously in this deck, there's a lot about practices, and also the Season of the Witch. Obviously, we're looking at the Wheel of the Year. But I believe that the strongest way in which you can use this deck is indeed during this time of the year, because it is the witching hour. It is to believe to be at night, obviously when the entering of the access to the liminal space is kind of easier. And so that's an amazing deck to be using for Samhain. And this was the last one. Obviously there are other decks around, so if I have not mentioned one of your favorite decks for Samhain, please let me know in the comments below, because I always like to check them out. If you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It is very important for my channel to grow, and if I can manage to grow my channel, then I will obviously post even more content. And also don't forget to check out my membership program. It is so much fun, but also we're learning a lot and we're having these conversations together. It's a really nice family that we are growing. For now, have a great day.